5 years, I think now, and I absolutely love it as a resource. And what I'm going to be sharing today is how I used Edulastic this past summer to help with our summer school situation. So we needed to offer summer school to students who had previously failed an ELA class, and it needed to be 100% virtual, which, as I think we all know, is not an ideal situation. In addition, some of our students lacked reliable internet. So Edulastic enabled scaffolding and differentiation for students who struggle to be successful. And I'm going to talk about the different tools that I incorporated to do that. Edulastic also worked asynchronously, but it also showed their work in real time, so I could kind of make sure that they were keeping up with it. And then Edulastic assignments could be converted to PDFs and printed out easily or shared in a way that I could share with students. So it seemed like an ideal fit to create that sort of curriculum. So the first thing I did was created a theme for my curriculum. I always like to kind of build things around a theme. So I went with a farm to table theme, and it was a lot of things that were food related because I love food and I really enjoyed talking to my students about food. And I started each lesson, each Edulastic assignment was actually a full lesson. And it started with an attention grabber to engage students. And a lot of times these were short personal questions that linked to the skill or the text, or I had kind of short, funny videos, and students could respond. Um, and I use these to activate prior knowledge, but it also really allowed me to get to know my students and allowed my students to get to know me. And I think when you're working with asynchronous learning, still making those personal connections are so important. Working in social emotional learning into a curriculum is so important. And so what I did is I would have these little opportunities for students to share stories, and I would always give a modeled example where I shared something about myself. And there I also shared a little story about my daughter and included a picture. So I tried to make these personal too, and in ways that connected with the curriculum and the skills that we were working on. Um, Okay, the next part of the lesson, I provided direct instruction to students. And some of these I created myself using Screencastify. And I would use the passage-based questions to insert a video. And then I would ask students a question about what they learned from the direct instruction so that they would have accountability for that. Other times I use videos that other teachers have created, and I'm so, so thankful for all the material that teachers across the country and globe have created and provided for all of us to kind of share on YouTube. It's really, truly amazing, and I made use of that. I also use the passage feature to add additional tabs. So the passage feature allows you to add multiple passages so you can compare passages. But what I did for direct instruction was I provided differentiation with instruction. So if you see here on the choices, there's these little tabs. Students had a more challenging video, an easier video, and they also had a text lesson if they preferred that over a video. And then again, they would have the same question in response to all of that, but they had a choice. And I think students responded really positively toward that. Um, I would also sometimes provide modeled answers as a form of note taking to students. So, this particular assignment had them watching advertisements and looking for rhetorical appeals. And for the first couple, I would watch the video with them on a screencast and then provide explanation on how the appeals were used. They would answer a question using my explanation to guide them. And then eventually they would start working on their own and just watching the video and answering the question. So there was kind of a gradual release for them. So they would have someone kind of virtually right there with them as they did the assignment. Okay, the third part of the lesson is we would do practice or assessment of that skill. And I use the passage-based questions to provide students with text. And I absolutely love having the freedom to create my own curriculum because it allows me to use text that operate as windows and mirrors for my students. And I'm borrowing from the work here of Emily Style, who said that students really need literature that operates, or they need to read things that operate as mirrors that reflect their own experience, and that they can feel that they're not alone in the world, that there's others like them, but they also need to read things that are windows that expose them to new cultures and new practices. And I really try to provide a lot of diversity in the type of text that I use, the people that are writing these texts, the people that are reflected in those texts. And so I really tried to be mindful of that as I was creating this curriculum. I also tried to include text or videos that connected to our own local community. So to go back to that assignment where they were looking at ads for rhetorical appeals, I found a video with Larry Bird in it. Larry Bird actually went to our high school. So I like to provide little things like that in the curriculum as well, so students can be connected. Okay, there's also a lot of ways that you can include scaffolding for students and differentiation for students and help for students within Edulastic. So sometimes when I had harder questions for students, I would provide an example first where I would do a video modeling how to do the question. So I would basically give them the answers, but I would also kind of think aloud for them to show my thought process. And then I would give them similar questions to do on their own. So they kind of had some help that way. Another way I provided scaffolding was to use the show hints button. And I had to explain to students how to use this, but you can give hints to students with their questions. And so it provided a way to kind of help them. Even though we were working asynchronously, I could still kind of be there to help them with their work. I would also provide text and audio versions of each passage that we read. I would create screencasts here for them reading it, and I would use a second tab to provide them with audio. Or I would also use videos of the writer reading their own text. So we have a speech by Michelle Obama talking about food and marketing of food. And so they were able to watch a video of her giving the speech if they wanted to follow it that way. Another way I used differentiation was by giving students a choice of passages. So here they had three different choices of passages using the passage and the tabs again. And then they would have a standards based question that could be applied to any of those passages. So I think students really appreciated having those options sometimes. And I really appreciated that Edulastic kind of gave the opportunity to have those options. The last part of the lesson was a place for students to reflect. Again, was as a way to build relationships where students could either reflect on the passage or make personal connections to the text. Or I would also ask them questions that allowed them to tell me what they needed help on for the future or what they were struggling on with the material. So it was kind of a check in with students to kind of find out what I needed to be doing as a teacher to help them. Our daily setup for our summer school is 3 weeks long and it's about 4 hours each day. So we began each day with a Google Meet. I gave students a grade for attending, but they weren't penalized for not attending, so it could only help their grade. I did supplement with no red ink and a couple Google form anticipation guides, but about 90% of the assignments were on Edulastic. I love that it's so flexible. It allowed me to do a lot. And after our Google Meet, students worked asynchronously, but I was able to help through Google Meet or email. Students without internet joined our Google Meet using a phone, and the school provided ways of having USB set up or something like that, or paper printouts for students without internet of the Edulastic assignments. And then I used the live view in Edulastic to track how students were doing with the work in real time. And I really appreciated that. It's really awesome to kind of watch students as they're working and see how they're progressing, and also seeing where they get stuck and knowing to email them about how I can help. Some students completed the assignments each day on schedule. Some caught up in the last week, but they got done. The majority of students passed the course, and given the situation and the student population, I was really proud of how they did and how this worked. And the students and parents were really positive about the curriculum, and I think they really liked the consistent Edulastic format. They knew what to expect, but Edulastic gave me enough variety that it wasn't boring either. I could do some different things within the format. The last thing I want to say is that this curriculum required a ton of work. So I'm not going to say that it was easy to do this. It took a lot of time. But once the course started, I had hardly anything to do. It was mainly keeping up those relationships and keeping up on seeing and checking student work. And then I have a ready to go curriculum now that this year I've been in person, but also teaching virtual students at the same time. And I have material that works for both of those student populations. So I've really appreciated everything that Edulastic has provided and enabled me to do in the classroom. And that is how to find my farm to table curriculum and how to find my assignments on Edulastic. So if that's not something that you want to do yourself, but you want to use the material of others, there's tons of materials you can use that other teachers have already created. Thank you.